Today I'm joined by Brian Deegan. Brian was responsible for the London Cycling Design Standards when he was at TfL. He's now a design engineer at Urban Movement, supporting Chris Boardman in delivering Manchester's exciting new walking and cycling infrastructure. So Brian, you must have thought all your Christmases had come at once when you heard Grant Shapps' announcement that there was to be a 2 billion boost to expenditure on cycling and walking.
Well, yeah, the 2 billion was good, but that wasn't the most exciting bit. It was the kind of rhetoric and the language around it, and the sheer legal force that we're putting behind actually doing stuff for walking and cycling. For me, that's what I got truly excited about. That people were saying, oh, well, the money was already allocated for buses and bikes, but still, they freed up 250 million to spend now on the emergency, and that was great how seriously they were taking it. And like I say, the sheer force of the argument and the quoting of the legal acts and the kind of hanging in the air threats as if you didn't do anything, something legal could happen against you. That really helps me at the moment when I'm trying to persuade local authorities to do stuff and to tackle this. So yes, so that was a negative spin on what was a great day. But it's great to see the government using language and rhetoric that campaigners have been using for a while. I think they're taking it seriously, and I'm hoping that stands us in good stead for the next emergency, the old climate emergency that we have to deal with. So fantastic. I really enjoyed reading it and seeing the power and the weight that the government were putting behind this.
You often are in argument with Department for Transport about what and what isn't permitted. Your life is going to be a lot easier in future, is it?
Well, yeah, there's arguments, and there's there's the laws and the regulations, and I like to think the Department for Transport might see me as an irritant, but I'm an irritant who knows the rules and the regulations and kind of knows which ones we might be able to bend, and usually for the betterment of walking and cycling, really, and particularly in my career cycling, we've never really had like the full tool of options. So it's always been, well, how do we deal with cyclists at side roads? How do we deal with cyclists at signal junctions? We've had to change things, and we've had to adopt regulations and come up with our new way. So at least I know the existing ones, and I know which ones we can change. So they normally work quite well with me. Yes, I'm annoying that I don't just follow the rules and crack on with it, but I don't have the full suite of options, like I say, so we have to make changes, and they're working with me well on that, I will say.
But now we're seeing quite a lot of new temporary infrastructure going in London, and I have to say some of them are pretty tacky construction barriers, and I understand we're in rescue phase, but I'm sure that London could do better.
Yeah, I think we absolutely can, but the first stage is just, yeah, like you say, respond to the emergency, get something out there. What have we got in the sheds? What have the work gangs actually got hanging around there? Put it out there, get the space there, and then let's protect it. And then really for me, it's like, yeah, think about putting attractive things in there. I'm advising local authorities to think of attractive straight off the get-go if they're kind of planning something out in a reasonable time period. But I do like the whole just get out there and do stuff, drop something in the middle of the road, get a filter going in there, put some cones in, get it all worked in there, and then we can get people used to having that space, and then hopefully the final schemes will be a lot more attractive. Albeit, having said that, there are some attractive temporary options as well, there's no doubt about it. Planters are a good temporary option in there, and there's quite a lot you can get off the shelf that would do the job on the road there. But yeah, I've been appreciating how quickly people have been mobilising. If you'd asked me 2 or 3 weeks ago, I'd be saying, why is nobody doing anything? It's an absolute disaster. But particularly in London and a few other places now, that we've really seen them starting to roll stuff out there. And yeah, and some of it does look a little bit racetracky. There's no doubt about it. And I'd steer people towards Dave McKenna's paper on doing attractive temporary infrastructure. Now, I think that's well worth a look at. So yeah, we can do better, but at the moment, let's grab that space because people need it.
Tell us about your project for using more zebra crossings at side road junctions.
I went for a walk around Paris. Actually, I went for a walk around Paris with you, Peter, didn't I? Yeah, there we go. We did a a 2-hour walk towards the station. Every single side road we passed had a side road zebra on it. And we could continue our conversation about the great architecture and how amazing Paris was without stopping every 20 to 30 meters and thinking, is that car going to cut across my path? Will I make it to the other side in there? And it's that kind of like a feeling that we want to bring over to the UK. As it stands at the moment, pedestrians are enjoying somewhat of a bit of priority to walk in the road, to pass people in there, and getting a little bit more slack off drivers. So I'm hoping that the side road zebra will help reinforce that after this emergency, or to a large extent during it as well, if we can like get some kind of nod from the government to proceed with this thing. So yeah, the idea is just to use the zebra marking, the most recognizable marking in the world. And we've done some research with the Transport Research Laboratory. The initial results are looking good, although we've had to pause that research, and that research was going to be the strong case to the Department for Transport. But what we have seen is that 94% of drivers recognise the zebra marking on the side road. It is very recognisable, but also that 83% of drivers are likely to give way to it, compared to like a base condition with no crossing, just a standard side road. It's around about 26% will give way. So that's a massive improvement on the potential to actually give way to pedestrians. And it really feels like night and day if you're walking. And from the cycling side of it, if we can get drivers slowing down and thinking as they come into and out of side roads, then that's a huge amount of collisions that we're potentially saving there as well. So yeah, I'm hoping the government will see the light on this and support us. I really wanted to get all the research done, but that's obviously delayed. But I can't help but thinking that we have these markings now, they can add to all the other things that we're suggesting people do, the filters and the physical distancing, and really help people out during this crisis. And particularly as people come back to work, we want them to keep walking, we want them to keep cycling, we have to keep them safe.
So you mentioned pedestrian priority streets in Paris. Could one put them into UK roads? How would you do that?
Yeah, so the French can pass a traffic order to kind of allow people to walk in there and kind of drive at like walking speed and stuff. In the UK, we can say, oh, well, we haven't got that order, we can't do it. But it's a bit like cycle streets as well. We can design something to create those conditions. And there's an example I've been using where planters, chairs, seating, put in the middle of like a carriageway, and there's some painting of you remember back to the way Hackney did Narrowway up in Mare Street when they did all painted colours and dragged some planter boxes around there. So we can create the conditions where people feel that they have a legitimate right to walk down the middle of the carriageway in there, and drivers are looking out to expect them. And for me, that's a design choice. And my role as a designer is trying to create behaviours that benefit society through the street design choices I make. So yes, putting planters in there, putting some seating in there, doing some different painting and surface dressings, all quite cheap stuff, but they can radically transform the way a street is perceived and the way drivers and pedestrians interact on it. So I think we can be creative and looking at it. It can be quite an attractive solution as well. We need to legitimise people walking in the carriageway. We need drivers to understand that the roads weren't just built for them, they were built for everybody. And at the moment, they've got to expect that there's going to be families and children at all times of the day walking in the middle of the carriageway. They have to get ready to yield for it. So yeah, I think that's a real way to go. So I've been pushing cycle streets, but I think the pedestrian priority streets are a real godsend from Paris. So I'm advising people to have a look at those.
Anyway, you were going at great guns in Manchester even before this happened, but presumably that will be accelerated now. Tell us what the situation is there now.
Yeah, I think like a lot of what we've been talking about to plan like a citywide network, I think it's planned at about 1,500 miles at the moment of the initial planning now. We've been planning it, we've been working people. It's all on the design lines that people want to use. Just right now in the crisis, it's really brought into focus. It's going, okay, what is this route? Can we do it now? What can we accelerate? So it's really good to hear people having those conversations. Sometimes people can slightly overplan things in the UK, and you can spend 3 or 4 years trying to convince everybody that this is the way to go. Whereas it's quite nice for people to just give it a test now and then get the space, get these things working in a rough and ready manner, and then ask people, well, shall we keep it? Shall we hardwire it in there? Is this the sort of thing we're looking at? So I'm really excited about the potential for laying out a network. And I know that's Will Norman's plans in London as well, to lay out the strategic cycle network as quickly as possible and then say, okay, I'd rather do a consultation with it in place, a little bit like the Waltham Forest trials, give people a taste of it and going, is this the way you want to live? and then have a view, rather than sending it out going, I'm moving this car parking space, I'm doing this, what do you think? Or we better have several rounds of consultation on it. It's going to take years to decide, and we'll have a few legal proceedings as well. These things can drag on and on and on, and at the moment, I'm pleased that people have seen the benefits of it, because we've got more people walking and cycling at the moment, and we need this infrastructure, and frankly, we can't wait for a 10-year planning cycle for it to go in. So I'm excited about the possibilities of putting stuff in there to help people out during the emergency.
So, but as you'll remember from your time in London, clearly one of the difficulties of delivering this right across London was boroughs. Do you have the same issue in Manchester, or does the Metro Mayor have rather more influence on the area than maybe the mayor in London does?
Yeah, well, it's funny in London, because I worked in London quite a long time. For years, the big problem was transport for London. That, well, there's no point doing this route. Every time we get to a bit of red route, they'll never let us do a junction. We can't affect capacity in there. It's a nightmare. So that was kind of used as an excuse for years. And then Transport for London really started up in their game, doing some high quality stuff. And it's like, oh, the boroughs are the problem. And I think to an extent, some of the boroughs had got disheartened, thinking we can never do this kind of thing. We're always going to get a no. And then it was like, well, you can. Which ones will you do? So it's getting people ready to build as well. Just in London as well, there's a real a gap period when there wasn't any specific cycling funding, for example. So people started working in different ways and doing different things. So I think they're a lot more aligned now. But still, we're trying to get everybody going there. Yeah, when it comes to Manchester, I'd kind of learned a few tricks from London of how to get local authorities going, really. And when I first started, I said to Chris Boardman, I said, there's three things you need to build a network and spend money efficiently. You need the politicians at the top to approve stuff in there. You need the technical officers who can design it to a high standard. You need the people to actually want it. And my time in London, it was waiting for those three to be aligned and then say, okay, oh, look, Greenwich is online. Good politicians have just come in there. They've got a great technical staff in there. And actually the people seem to want it. What we find in Manchester is most of the people want it in most of the areas. Where we felt the politicians were lacking, I went round with Chris Boardman and we spoke to them all, and all the new councillors when they came in at the last elections, we went round and briefed them all on what the project was to make sure they were lined up there. And from the kind of technical side in the middle, spent an enormous amount of time doing training and doing training courses, do the Be a Champion course to try and make new walking and cycling champions. So we try and fix all those three things. And I have to say in Manchester, everybody's engaged. They've all got schemes. They're all rolling with it. So I think that's, I learned a lot of lessons from London. And if I was to judge London right now, I'd say probably about a third are in line with all three of those parameters in there. I won't say which ones, but in Manchester, I think we're looking pretty good in most of the districts at the top. In the middle, I think we're getting there. We've got champions in each of the areas in there, but maybe we could do a little bit more there. And I think the groundswell of opinion from the bottom, people are demanding cycle tracks. And I think that's the case certainly in London as well. People are saying, why aren't you doing this stuff? And you'll do a consultation, you hear from 200 people who don't want it, but then there's 20,000 people that do. I just think, why aren't you doing this? When can I get my kids to school safely in there? So yeah, it's learning those lessons and applying them quickly. I think that's part of the appeal of why Chris wanted me up there.
Well, I think there is a real momentum now. People want this sort of change. Brian, thank you very much for your comments. It's always a pleasure to chat cycling and walking with you.
Thanks, Peter. Good to speak to you.